The anime begins in the Demon King's castle, where the heroes' party is gathered. Hyuga asks if everyone is ready. Mikana says that she has researched all the abilities of the Demon King and his followers, and that Hyuga will surely come out victorious. He tells the group to move forward, and everyone agrees. At that moment, the castle gate opens, and several of the Demon King's minions appear. After defeating all of them, the group reaches Yuki's room, who asks if they are all heroes and if they're there to defeat the Demon King. He says that if that's the case, it's a shame, because they'll have to defeat him before they can get to the Demon King. Mikana casts a fireball at Yuki, but he easily stops it, saying that her magic is weak. Raven then charges forward with his sword, trying to strike Yuki, but Yuki dodges all the attacks and counters with a kick. Cecilia uses support magic on Hyuga, who attacks with Excalibur, but is easily defeated by Yuki's endless darkness magic, and everyone falls to the ground. When Yuki is about to use magic on them, he becomes enchanted by Cecilia, realizing that she's exactly his type. At that moment, Yuki's subordinates appear, asking if they should finish them off. Yuki is startled and comments that he told them to stay hidden. Six says that they were watching the girl on the ground the whole time and asks what happened. Yuki tries to play it off, saying he was just thinking about what to do with them. Duke says they should kill them, but Yuki refuses, ordering them to throw everyone out of the castle into the nearby human village. They obey, complaining that it's a pain and that he's going to get scolded by the Demon King again. A month later, Yuki is summoned to the Demon King's throne, and Zeikir asks how many times the heroes group has challenged him and lost. Yuki replies that it was 13 times. Zeikir says that if they lost to someone like him, they never really scared them. The Demon King asks why Yuki doesn't just finish off the heroes group. Yuki answers that they're just insects and not worth killing. However, the Demon King says that if he doesn't want to do it, he'll give the task to his subordinates. Yuki knows that they are no match for the heroes group and takes on the task himself. After that, he reflects that the heroes group is strong enough to even defeat the Demon Lord. Since Yuki is so powerful, it almost seems like cheating. Since he is a demon, he can't let the Demon King die and decides to end everything in the next confrontation. The next day, the heroes group returns and says they're going to put an end to him. Hyuga and Raven charge at Yuki but are easily blocked. He uses dark magic on them and throws both of them against the wall. Cecilia says she'll heal them and asks Mikana to buy some time. Mikana casts a fire spell, but it has no effect, and she realizes that Yuki is just too strong. Cecilia heals Hyuga and Raven. Yuki starts laughing at them, saying that no matter how much they fight, they'll be cast into darkness every time. Hyuga asks for cover for Cecilia and uses the sacred sword technique Excalibur, but it doesn't succeed. Yuki says they're not capable of defeating him and makes a proposal. He asks them to leave the priestess behind, and then they'll be allowed to pass. Hyuga refuses, but Mikana says they should accept the proposal since they can't defeat him and need to reach the Demon King. Hyuga refuses again, and Mikana says that a priestess isn't more important than saving the world. Cecilia asks them to go, saying she'll be fine. Hyuga agrees, saying that right after they defeat the Demon King, they'll come back for her. Yuki opens the door and they move forward. When they're alone, Cecilia asks why he requested that only she stay, since she can't even scratch him by herself, but says she won't give up. She uses holy magic against him. Yuki defends himself and asks her to listen to what he has to say. He introduces himself, but Cecilia doesn't understand why he's introducing himself to someone he intends to kill. Yuki explains that if he wanted to kill the group, he could have done it since their first encounter. She asks what he wants and Yuki says he fell in love with her at first sight and asks her to go out with him. Cecilia is shocked and refuses, leaving Yuki completely depressed. She points her staff at him, saying she won't let her guard down because of such a cheap trick, but Yuki doesn't resist. He says that now that he's been rejected, he doesn't care about anything anymore. Yuki explains that even though he's alive, he can only stay in that place, since he can only leave the castle to attack human villages, and he has no interest in that. Cecilia tells him to stop lying, saying that all humans are cruel. Yuki reveals that, even though he looks like a demon, he was reincarnated from another world. She doesn't understand, and he explains that, on the inside, he's human. Cecilia asks why he obeys the Demon King's orders. Yuki replies that if he killed the Demon King, he would become the next king, and he has no interest in that. As a result of his choices, he spent days in seclusion, but after meeting her, he fell in love and couldn't stop thinking about her. It was the first time he ever felt alive. But now that he's been rejected, nothing else matters. Cecilia tells him that if he has a human heart, he should use that power for the good of others, and invites him to go to the outside world with her. Shortly after, we see our heroes being honored for their bravery, as it seems they really did manage to defeat the Demon King. King Dartortna Clarines, from the Kingdom of Clarines, is responsible for this and must do it, since from now on, A new era begins in which humans can live in peace. While everyone is celebrating, our dear Yuki is on the outskirts of the city, as he plans to get to know this place better so he can stay by Cecilia's side. With this determination, he goes and rips off his own horn, feeling excruciating pain. Meanwhile, the people keep celebrating our heroes. However, we can notice something curious. The sorceress seems interested in the hero, who, in turn, completely ignores her and pays much more attention to Cecilia, saying that it was thanks to her that they won this battle. And let's be honest, that's not even a lie. Meanwhile, our protagonist arrives at the Adventurers Guild. He wants to register, but the person at the reception isn't friendly at all. He doesn't even really know what the procedure is, but he finds a sheet and says that Yuki needs to fill out the form with his name, age, and a signature, stating that if anything happens during the job, the guild won't be held responsible. This guy ends up registering him as Yuki, 21 years old, hands him his guild card, and informs him that he'll start at rank F, the lowest among adventurers. I think this is already common knowledge, but he can rise up to rank S, which is the highest. That will give him more reputation, better missions, and of course, more money, cash, dough, bucks. This man named Clayman doesn't seem very excited to work, but at least he wishes Yuki good luck on his adventure. Later that night, our protagonist completes a few missions, earns some money, and starts thinking about what he can do from now on. But his biggest plan is, once again, to confess his feelings to Cecilia. He wants her to accept his love, no matter what, and ends up laughing like a madman again. And as expected given his strength, it doesn't take long for rumors to start spreading about a boy who is rising through the ranks incredibly fast. The best part is that Yuki doesn't stop working. He always goes to talk to Clayman so that he'll accept his missions. This ends up irritating the man, since he's not the only one working there, although, according to Yuki, it's precisely because of Clayman that, ironically, even though he's lazy, he works especially fast. What he didn't expect was that Clayman would also be so curious, as he soon asks who the hell Yuki is. He tries to say that he's just an ordinary adventurer, but Clayman thinks that's nonsense. It's only been a week and he's already gone from rank F to rank D, so there's nothing normal about that. Our protagonist gets scared, thinking he's about to be found out. But Clayman says that, well, at least he's not doing anything illegal, so they end up letting it go. Even so, they make it very clear that reception is not his job. At that moment, a hooded young woman also appears, asking to cancel all those missions. When she turns around, Yuki immediately realizes it's Cecilia and is completely captivated. Clayman, of course, knows her too and asks what the hell she's doing there. The girl tries not to draw attention, but tells Yuki that they need to talk, asking him to accompany her to her house. And of course, our protagonist doesn't see any problem with that. However, as soon as they arrive at the residence, we notice that the guards are also very fond of Cecilia. Especially one of them, who, upon seeing a man get out of the carriage, asks who the hell he is. His companion tries to calm him down, but at that moment Cecilia appears visibly irritated, saying that Yuki is her friend. This breaks the guard's heart, and he ends up leaving, unable to do anything. With that, the two enter the house and are able to talk more calmly. Cecilia had wanted to talk to him for some time but hadn't had the chance. Our protagonist says it's no problem, since he's been having a lot of fun as an adventurer, and interestingly, that's exactly why Cecilia wanted to talk to him. Yuki has become the man of the moment. People are saying that the rookie adventurer is rising through the guild ranks at an incredible pace, and that's why she sought him out. And it's precisely about the guild that she wants to talk. Out of nowhere, she asks him to please leave the Adventurers Guild. Obviously, Yuki is surprised and wants to know why. According to her, this is happening because, as he knows, the hero defeated the Demon King. However, that doesn't mean all the world's threats have disappeared, which makes sense, since defeating the Demon King doesn't automatically eliminate all other dangers. Yuki says she's right, but Cecilia explains that those aren't the real problem. Now, the human kingdoms have started fighting among themselves to achieve supremacy, and signs of this have already begun to appear. For example, the hero has received countless marriage proposals from various different nations, and Yuki thinks this is just because he suddenly became popular. But that's not exactly why she's bringing this up. There are nations that want to have all the military strength and as much manpower as possible at their disposal. And that's exactly why she came to talk to him. Since Yuki is rising through the ranks at an incredible pace, he will definitely end up among the few S-rank adventurers in the nation. But when that happens, all eyes will be on him. If at any point he reveals his demonic power, he could be used as a tool, and people would want to conquer the world, which, ironically, would turn him into a demon king once again. That's why she asks him not to draw so much attention, which is difficult since our protagonist needs to pay the bills and survive. However, Cecilia says that in that case, she can hire him personally. Of course, she doesn't have enough resources to support an S-rank adventurer, but in exchange, she'll do everything within her power for him. She only wants to do this because she truly cares about the nation's peace, to the point of even bowing before our protagonist, something he doesn't like at all, asking her never to do that again in her life. He makes it very clear that even if a beautiful lady were to appear and confess to him, he would never accept, because the only person admired by his eyes is her. This ends up making poor Cecilia laugh, since once again he's putting on quite a show, just like in the days when he was a demon. This makes her feel much more at ease. Then she says that he can continue working as an adventurer. Yuki agrees and also says that he'll try not to stand out so much. At that moment, someone knocks on the door looking for Cecilia. That's when we're introduced to Aquarin, her mother. Our protagonist gets hyper, mega, super nervous in front of her. Aquarin apologizes to Yuki for the doorman's behavior and tells him not to worry, because Sophia, one of her maids, will take care of disciplining him. Sophia asks Aquarin how many bones she should leave intact, which makes both Cecilia and Yuki extremely worried. Getting to what really matters, Aquarin asks Sophia to leave for a moment and, alone, asks her daughter if she talked to him about that. Apparently, Cecilia has received several marriage proposals, and, to make matters worse, one of them came from the hero. This makes our protagonist completely lose his patience and start cursing him out loud. The mother clearly notices that Yuki is in love with her daughter, and seeing that there was no way to hide it anymore, he doesn't even try. Then, Aquarin comes closer and asks if, in that case, he would like to marry Cecilia. Obviously, he was just about to say yes, but then he notices his friend's expression. That's why he restrains himself and says that actually, he already confessed before and was rejected. For now, he just intends to work hard, achieve good things, and when he feels ready, confess again. Something that's already starting to bore the mother a little. It was obvious she would try to encourage something, but Yuki apologizes if he offended her and says he wants to respect Cecilia's feelings. By doing this, interestingly enough, he ends up passing the mother's test, since she would never entrust her daughter to just anyone who showed up. Even so, seeing how he behaves, Aquarin feels more at ease, realizing that he isn't bad company, and hoping that he gets along well with her daughter. With that, she leaves, and Cecilia also says goodbye to Yuki. But before that, quite nervously, she asks if he can do her a small favor. Allow her to call him by his name. She thinks it might be too much to ask, since they barely know each other. But for her, it's not a problem at all. In return, she will also call him Yuki, which makes our protagonist super happy. Sometime later, Yuki finds himself dodging the attacks of a cockatrice with extreme ease and, after cooking it with impact thunder and collecting its feathers, he gets ready to deliver the quest. He remembers that Clayman had said this mission would take an entire week, but for him, it only took a single day. However, suddenly, he is attacked by his former group, and upon recognizing them, he warns Sid not to attack him since it's Yuki. He makes it clear that he's relieved to see them alive. Even so, his former group demands an explanation, since he now appears human. They ask what the hell happened to his horn and his wings, revealing that they were very worried about him, since he disappeared when the Demon King died. Yuki then reveals that he confessed his feelings to the priestess from the hero's party and was rejected, but now he's living as a human adventurer. His former companions are left perplexed. Even so, Yuki says that now they can live however they want, but they refuse to just do as they please because they intend to stay with him. Besides that, they also want to meet his human crush. Yuki replies that that won't be possible, but they say that if he can change his appearance, then so can they, so there's nothing to worry about. Yuki isn't very convinced, but he ends up accepting it. In another scene, during dinner, Cecilia scolds him, asking what kind of bastard he is to pluck all the feathers off a harpy, who is still a girl, even if it's just to disguise her, and he apologizes. Sometime later, while they're having small cups of tea, Cecilia comments that they don't seem like monsters. Duke replies that, actually they are. He's a Dullahan. Happiness is a harpy and Stee is a red. Yuki scolds him for talking too much, which is the opposite of what a Dullahan would do. Duke responds that it's all Yuki's fault and reveals that he used to hate him. He remembers that when they were in the Demon King's castle, Yuki was famous for being a hermit. Even when his superior Saikyo ordered him to attack the humans, Yuki would reply that he should get out of that damn room. When Duke found out about this, he thought it was very improper for a demon to act that way and tried to correct him by force, but ended up pulling off his own head and shouting all sorts of things. And that's how he ended up the way he is now. What matters is that now he respects Yuki more, just like Sitch and Happiness do. However, at that moment, they realize that neither of them is nearby, so they quickly go out to look for them before they cause any trouble. The first one they find is Stee, who is with Yuki's mother-in-law. She asks if he knows the boy, and he replies that he's his friend and apologizes in case he caused any inconvenience. The mother-in-law replies that she loves children, and that earlier he was running around the garden, so she decided to keep him company. but then she got tired and ended up falling asleep. Cecilia asks her mother if there wasn't a girl with him, and she replies that Sophia took her inside the house. The boys get worried, and meanwhile, we see Sophia teaching how to be a maid, praising Happy for having talent. Upon entering the mansion, Sophia introduces the new maid, who will start working from that day on. Yuki asks, "What the hell is she doing dressed like that?" Cecilia explains the situation to Sophia, who apologizes, as she thought Happy was the new maid who was supposed to arrive that day. Yuki asks Happy to change her clothes right away, but she refuses, saying that now she wants to work as a maid. After exchanging a glance with Sophia, she agrees and takes her to the service quarters. Sometime later, at dusk, already settled in the mansion, the boys say goodbye to her and ask her to do an excellent job. At that moment, Yuki's mother-in-law approaches to whisper that her daughter, besides working as a priestess, also has to attend to VIPs, which is why she is so tired. For that reason, the next day, she will give her the day off and hopes that he will invite her out. In fact, the next day, he is already waiting for Cecilia to go out with her. He is clearly a little nervous, since he knows this is basically a date approved by her parents. When Cecilia finally arrives, Yuki is completely blown away by her casual outfit and her beauty. She is wearing clothes different from her usual style, and he can't stop thinking about how good they look on her. Cecilia notices that he isn't saying anything, so Yuki quickly compliments her glasses. She explains that they're a disguise because if people recognize her as a member of the heroes group, everything would turn into chaos. Yuki easily understands the life of someone famous, saying it must be hard to live like that, and Cecilia just apologizes for making him go along with her. Yuki immediately brushes off the subject and says he'll cooperate with her so that it will be a good day off. The two walk through the city, and the first thing she notices is that there's a new cake at the bakery. Cecilia looks through the shop window, sees the many adorable cakes on display, and asks Yuki if they can stop by later to try some. Yuki agrees and they continue walking through the city, enjoying their time together. Cecilia has fun watching the flowers and some cats. Meanwhile, Yuki firmly thinks that she's the only cute thing his eyes can see. She also decides to try on some clothes at a store, and Yuki doesn't hesitate to compliment her. After that, they continue their stroll, and Cecilia says that thanks to him, she feels like the fatigue of daily life is fading away. Yuki sees this as an achievement, and upon noticing a jewelry store, he invites her to go in and look at some accessories. Cecilia happily agrees, but her voice is instantly recognized by Hyuga, who is also in disguise along with Mikana. He tries to call her by name without thinking, but Mikana immediately stops him, saying that everyone will know who she is if he shouts like that. Hyuga apologizes and decides to approach Cecilia to greet her, asking what brought her there. He explains that they took a day off for the first time in a long while to go out and have fun, so he would love for her to join them. Yuki just stands by her side, wondering if that guy is pretending not to see him. Cecilia quickly apologizes and explains that today she is with a friend. Only then does Hyuga notice Yuki's presence. Immediately he leans in to get a closer look at his face, asking if they've met somewhere before. Yuki gets a little nervous and says it must be his imagination. Cecilia immediately agrees, not wanting Hyuga to find out who Yuki is. Hyuga easily lets it go and says that in that case, she can go with them, and without giving her a chance to respond, pulls her into the jewelry store. Before they can protest, both Yuki and Mikana are left outside, and Mikana complains that her first meeting with Hyuga in a long time was ruined like this. She refers to Yuki as a boring-faced civilian, but hopes things work out between him and the priestess. When he enters the shop, Yuki observes Hyuga and remembers that Cecilia turned down the hero's marriage proposal, but apparently he's still interested in her. Even so, Yuki isn't going to let himself be defeated just because the other guy is handsome. He refuses to give up and enters the shop. He approaches Cecilia and asks if she found any accessories she likes. Cecilia is happy to see him again and apologizes for leaving him outside, but Yuki downplays it and says he'll buy her a present since they're there. This catches her by surprise, so Yuki reassures her and explains that it's to thank her for what happened last time. Cecilia smiles and decides to accept, but Hyuga is not at all happy with their little interaction, so he butts in and says that he'll pick something for Mikana and also for Cecilia. Yuki wonders if he's trying to compete with him, but doesn't see him as a threat and ends up focusing on a beautiful necklace with a blue gem. He picks up the necklace and tells Cecilia that it would look great on her, and she really likes it, getting a little nervous. Cecilia says it's wonderful, but at that exact moment, Hyuga shows up with a huge hair accessory he picked out for her. Mikana isn't impressed at all, but Hyuga is completely confident and proudly tells Cecilia that it's the most expensive item in the store. Yuki isn't impressed either, since the most expensive isn't always the best, especially in this case. Ignoring all common sense, Hyuga carelessly takes off Cecilia's hat to put the accessory in her hair. By removing her disguise, the people in the store immediately recognize her, as well as Hyuga and Mikana. Within seconds, everyone is surrounded by civilians and Cecilia says it's time to leave the store. The angry crowd takes everyone away, leaving Yuki behind since no one knows who he is. Yuki starts running through the city, knowing he needs to find Cecilia as quickly as possible. Shortly after, he comes across another crowd, but this time they're surrounding Raven, the knight from the heroes group. Yuki doesn't remember very well, but he feels like he's seen that handsome man before. A man next to him tells him that Raven is the former swordsman from the heroes group, who was promoted to captain of the knights. Then Yuki finally remembers him as the quiet swordsman who fought alongside the hero back then. It seems that now he's having trouble, so Yuki decides to help him and shouts that he saw the hero going in the opposite direction. The crowd immediately runs after the hero, finally leaving Raven alone. Yuki takes the opportunity to run with him into an empty alley, knowing that they wouldn't be found there. Raven nervously searches for something in his pockets, and Yuki assumes he won't get any thanks, so he decides to leave and advises him to use a disguise next time he goes out for a walk. Raven quickly stops him before he can leave, and Yuki is surprised to hear his voice for the first time, as it sounds much more feminine than he expected. He finally understands why Raven can't speak in front of people. Raven asks if he isn't going to make fun of him, since he knows his voice doesn't sound very masculine. Yuki smiles and says that everyone has a part of themselves they don't want others to point out, just like he himself is a demon. Raven comments that Yuki is a rare type because most people laugh when they hear his voice. Yuki assures him that he won't laugh and tries to leave once again. However, Raven stops him for the second time and nervously asks if he would like to be his friend. This clearly surprises Yuki, so Raven quickly explains that the only people who didn't laugh at his voice were his mother and his cousin. Yuki smiles and gladly accepts. Then Yuki starts looking for Cecilia around the city because he doesn't want their first date to end like this. Cecilia is also looking for him, but she finds a little boy crying alone and decides to help him by using her healing magic on his injured knee. Even so, the boy keeps crying loudly because his mother isn't around. At that moment, Yuki appears and, with his exaggerated dramatics, tells the boy that he will search everywhere until he finds his mother. The boy finally stops crying, not knowing how to react, but Cecilia immediately scolds Yuki. Both Yuki and Cecilia are relieved that the boy isn't crying anymore, so they start looking for his mother around the city. Meanwhile, Hyuga keeps searching for Cecilia and drags Mikana everywhere with him. Mikana tries to convince him to go home, saying that this is going to turn into chaos and that they'll be surrounded again. She says that the priestess has probably already gone home, but Hyuga gets annoyed with her insistence and says that, unlike her, he is actually worried about Cecilia. He quickly lets go of Mikana's hand and runs off, determined to find her. Mikana just wonders what's going on. After all, she's still there with him. Shortly after, Hyuga finally finds Cecilia and Yuki, who manage to find the boy's mother. However, when he turns to tell Mikana that he found them, she is already gone. She has finally learned to value herself. The next day, Celia tells Yuki that Cecilia has fallen ill and explains that, in addition to the exhaustion she deals with every day, the commotion from the previous day pushed her past her limits. Yuki immediately feels guilty, but Celia reassures him and says that Cecilia just has a mild cold and that it's not his fault at all. On the other hand, after Hyuga was dragged out amid all that chaos, he insisted on taking care of Cecilia, and she doesn't even know how he found out about it. Celia smiles and says that Cecilia told her everything Yuki did for her, so he can go visit her if he wants. Sophia guides him through the mansion to Cecilia's room, and from her reaction, it's clear she wasn't expecting any visitors. Cecilia gets extremely nervous and asks them to wait, but Sophia reassures her and says she's already put away her teddy bear. This makes Cecilia even more embarrassed, since that was supposed to be a state secret. Sophia ignores her and asks Yuki to come in. Yuki enters Cecilia's room for the first time and sits on the stool next to her bed. He apologizes for what happened, but she says it wasn't his fault. Even so, Yuki insists and explains that he knew she was exhausted, so it was wrong of him to drag her around like that. Cecilia smiles and decides to play along, saying that in that case, it really was his fault. And since her day off was ruined because of that, she wants him to go out with her on the next free day to make up for it. Yuki obviously wasn't expecting that, but he quickly gets excited, since it's clearly a promise of another date. His dramatic side shows up again when he says he won't let her down again. However, as soon as she starts coughing, Sophia doesn't hesitate to kick him out of there. As Yuki walks away from the mansion, he suddenly runs into Raven, who nervously asks him for advice because there's someone he likes. There's a girl who didn't make fun of his voice and even praised it, saying she envied him. Yuki immediately understands why he fell for her and decides to give him some confidence, reminding him of who he is and how handsome he is. He assures him that if that girl praised his voice, then he has nothing to worry about and should definitely make the first move. Luckily, it seems to have worked. Raven drops his disguise and thanks him for the advice, saying it helped him find his courage, and that he's going to confess his feelings to the girl. Then, after Raven starts walking straight ahead, Yuki begins to wonder why he's heading toward the mansion. At that moment, he realizes that Raven was probably talking about Cecilia, and that's how episode 2 ends. If you enjoyed it, remember to subscribe to the channel. Comment date to show that you made it to this part of the video.